The warning sirens screamed across the crystal cities of Zeph Prime as another wave of Krex warships appeared in the purple sky. Vexai pressed his feathered hands against the cool metal of the emergency broadcast console, his bird-like head trembling with fear and exhaustion. Around him, the underground command center buzzed with panicked voices in 3 different alien languages. "How many ships this time?" Vexai asked, his voice barely a whisper. 47 confirmed, Council. Leader, replied Kixara, her golden feathers dulled with stress. They're targeting the evacuation centers again. Vexai closed his large black eyes and felt his heart sink deeper. For 10 long years, the Krex Empire had been hunting his people across the stars. The bird-like Zephyrians, the gentle aquatic Murthai, and the peaceful crystal beings called Kordak had formed their coalition, hoping to survive together. But hope was dying as quickly as their worlds fell to Krex claws. The Krex were everything the coalition species were not. 8 feet tall, with thick armored scales, razor-sharp teeth, and a hunger for conquest that seemed to grow with each victory. They took worlds not just for resources, but for the joy of breaking peaceful civilizations. They enslaved the survivors and stripped planets bare before moving to the next target. "Sir, the northern cities are gone," reported another aide, his voice shaking. "The Krex ground forces are advancing toward the capital." Vexai opened his eyes and stared at the communication array before him. For months, he had been preparing this message, hoping he would never need to send it. Now, with Krex ships darkening their sky and their armies marching on their last stronghold, the time had come. "Open all channels," he ordered. "Maximum range. Send it to every star system our arrays can reach." The technicians worked quickly, their delicate fingers dancing over controls that had been designed for peace, not war. Soon, the massive dishes hidden beneath Zeph Prime's surface turned toward the stars, ready to broadcast their leader's final plea across the galaxy. Vexai took a deep breath and began to speak. "This is Council Leader Vexai of the Zephyrian Coalition, broadcasting on all frequencies to any civilization that might hear this message. We are dying. For 10 years, the Krex Empire has hunted our people across space. They have taken 14 of our worlds. They have enslaved millions of our citizens. They kill not from hunger or need, but from cruelty." His voice grew stronger. As he continued, driven by desperation and the faces of billions counting on him, "We are not warriors. We're farmers, artists, scientists, and builders. We know the secrets of crystal technology that can heal wounded planets. We understand how to grow food in the void of space. Our knowledge of stellar navigation can cut travel time between systems in half. All of this we offer freely to any species that will help us survive." Round him, the command center had fallen silent, except for the soft hum of the transmission equipment. Everyone knew this was likely their last message to the universe. "We do not ask you to die for us. Ask only that you help us find a way to live. The Krex will not stop with our coalition. They will come for you next, whoever you are, wherever you hide. Help us stop them now, or face them alone later. This message will repeat for as long as our equipment functions. Council Leader Vexai, Zephyrian Coalition, ending transmission." The message began its automated loop, shooting out into the dark between stars at the speed of light. It would take months or years to reach distant civilizations, if anyone was even listening. Vexai slumped in his chair, feeling older than his 63 years. Meanwhile, 23 light-years away, Dr. Lisa Carter was working the night shift at Earth's Deep Space Communication Array in Nevada. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago as she monitored the endless stream of signals from space. Most were natural phenomena, stars singing their ancient songs or planets humming with magnetic fields. But sometimes, just sometimes, there was something more. The alert tone made her jump, spilling cold coffee across her keyboard. A new signal was coming in, structured and clearly artificial. Lisa's hands flew over her controls, isolating the transmission and running it through the translation protocols that had taken Earth's best minds 30 years to develop. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself as the computer began breaking down the alien language. The signal was not from any known Earth colony or probe. It was genuinely alien. Lisa called her supervisor, Dr. Gary Stone, who arrived within minutes, still wearing his pajamas under a hastily thrown-on lab coat. Together, they watched as the translation software slowly converted the alien sounds into English text. "Gary, are you seeing this?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "Plea for help from something called the Zephyrian Coalition," Gary read aloud. "They're offering advanced technology in exchange for military assistance against something called the Krex Empire. The signal strength suggests they're relatively close, maybe 20 to 30 light-years out," Lisa said, running calculations on her secondary screen. "If this is real, Gary, this is first contact. This is everything we've been waiting for." Gary was already reaching for the red phone that connected directly to the Pentagon. "Get me General Patricia Hayes at Space Command," he said, when the operator answered. "Tell her we have a Code 7 situation, and she needs to see this immediately." 6 hours. The top levels of Earth's government were in emergency session. The president sat at the head of a long table filled with military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. On the main screen, the alien message played for the 5th time. "Do we know about their military capabilities?" asked General Hayes, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Nothing concrete," replied Dr. Carter, who had been rushed to Washington to brief the leadership. But reading between the lines of their message, they seemed to be a peaceful coalition, facing a more aggressive enemy. He mentioned being farmers and scientists, not soldiers. "And they're offering what in return?" asked Secretary of Defense Jim Parker. "Advanced technology," Lisa answered. "Crystal technology for healing planets, space agriculture, improved stellar navigation. If they're not lying, this could advance human civilization by centuries." Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force leaned forward. He was young for his rank, but he had earned his position through skill and a talent for thinking outside the box. "Ma'am, we're talking about first contact with an alien species that's actively being wiped out. Every day we delay, more of them die. Captain Morrison, we have no idea what we'd be flying into," General Hayes replied. "These Krex could have weapons and ships that make our fleet look like toys. We could be sending our people to their deaths. With respect, General, they could also be paper tigers picking on peaceful farmers," Morrison countered.
"Oh, we won't know."
"Until we get there. But if we don't try, we'll always wonder if we could have made a difference." The president had been silent through most of the discussion, but now she spoke. "Dr. Carter, in your professional opinion, is this message genuine?" Lisa nodded without hesitation. "Yes, Madam President. The linguistic patterns, the desperation in the speaker's voice, the technical details about their technology.
Nice.
This is real. They're really out there, and they're really dying." "Then we go," the president decided. "Captain Morrison, you'll lead the mission. Take whatever ships and personnel you need. Make contact with these Zephyrians and assess the situation. If we can help them, we will." Morrison stood and saluted. "Thank you, Madam President. I won't let you down." As the meeting ended and officials hurried away to prepare for humanity's first interstellar military mission, none of them realized the galaxy was about to discover something it had never encountered before. They were about to learn that the small blue planet called Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, and its inhabitants were the products of an evolutionary crucible that would make them the most feared. Warriors in known space, the Zephyrians had begged for help. They were about to get Deathworlders. 3 weeks after leaving Earth, human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zeph Prime system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra's Wrath, watching the main screen as his sensors painted a picture of chaos. Dozens of alien ships were locked in battle around the blue-green planet that had sent the distress call. "Sir, I'm reading 43 hostile vessels," reported Lieutenant Sarah Beck from her station. "They're 8 times larger than our ships, and they're bombarding the planet's surface." Morrison nodded grimly. The Krex were already here, which meant they might be too late to save the aliens who had called for help. But humans didn't give up easily. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered into his communicator. "Remember, we're here to help the good guys and kick out the bad guys. Let's make Earth proud." Down in the underground shelters of Zeph Prime, Vex High was trying to coordinate the evacuation of the last crystal cities, when his communications officer, Zillinox, suddenly squawked in excitement. Council leader, we're detecting new ships at the system's edge. Zillinox chirped, his feathers bristling with nervous energy. 27 vessels. Unknown configuration. Vexai felt his heart skip a beat. More Krex. Reinforcements would mean the end of everything. Are they Krex? No, sir. The energy signatures are completely different. Sir, I think someone answered. Our call for help. For the first time in months, Vexai dared to hope. He activated the long-range communications array, the same one that had broadcast their plea to the stars. Unknown vessels, this is Council Leader Vex High of the Zephyrian Coalition. Please identify yourselves. On the Terra's Wrath, Morrison heard the translation come through in accented but understandable English. Voice sounded tired and desperate, like someone who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. Council Leader Vex High. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We received your message and we're here to help. We need coordinates for a safe meeting location. Vex High nearly fell from his perch. They had actually come. Someone had actually answered their call. Captain Morrison, thank you. We have secure bunkers beneath the northern continent. I'm transmitting coordinates now. While the fleets maneuvered toward the meeting point, Morrison assembled his first contact. Team. Ambassador Helen Price would handle the diplomacy. Dr. Amy Johnson would study the aliens' biology, and Dr. Lisa Carter had come along to help with translation issues. Colonel Ben Harris would assess the military situation. The human shuttle landed in a clearing that had been blasted smooth by Krex weapons only hours before. As the humans walked toward the hidden bunker entrance, they could hear the distant rumble of orbital bombardment continuing in other parts of the planet. The airlock cycled, and Ellen Price got her first look at an alien being. Vex High stood, nearly 7 feet tall, but his frame looked impossibly delicate. His bones seemed hollow like a bird's, and his movements were graceful but fragile. Colorful feathers covered his head and arms, and his large black eyes showed intelligence and desperate hope. Captain Morrison, Ambassador Price, welcome to Zeph Prime, Vex High said, his translated words carrying undertones of exhaustion. I apologize for the conditions. The Krex have been bombarding us for 6 days straight. No apology needed, Helen replied gently. We're here to help however we can. Can you tell us about your situation? As they walked through the bunker corridors, Vex High explained the Coalition's desperate position. They passed groups of refugee aliens, and Helen was struck by how fragile they all looked. The bird-like Zephyrians, the aquatic Murthai, with their translucent skin, and the crystalline Kordak who chimed softly when they moved. All of them looked at the humans with curiosity and growing hope. Dr. Johnson was busy taking readings. With her medical scanner, Captain, their bone density is about half of what we'd expect. Their muscle mass is significantly lower than humans, and their cardiovascular system seems designed for much lower gravity. What's the gravity here? Morrison asked. Out! About 60% of Earth normal, Johnson replied. These people evolved on a much gentler world than we did. In the main command center, Vexai showed them tactical displays of the Krex forces. The enemy ships were massive, bristling with weapons that could melt stone from orbit. The Krex ground forces were equally intimidating, 8-foot-tall reptiles covered in natural armor scales. This is Commander Thractor, Vexai said, pointing to an image of a particularly large Krex with scars covering his snout. He leads their assault forces. In 10 years of war, no one has ever successfully stood against him in direct combat. Colonel Harris studied the tactical information with professional interest. Their weapons look impressive, but their tactics are pretty basic. They rely on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. Have they ever faced significant resistance? No, admitted Vexai. Most species in our region of the galaxy are peaceful. We have never developed military technology like you must have. Tell me, Captain Morrison, what kind of world is Earth? What makes your people warriors? Morrison exchanged glances with his team. How could he explain Earth to beings who had evolved in paradise? Dr. Carter spoke up. Vex High, what's your atmospheric composition here? Standard breathing mix, Vexai replied, confused by the question. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, trace gases, and your weather patterns? Gentle rains, mild seasons, temperatures between 15 and 25 degrees in your measuring system? Dr. Carter nodded and pulled up Earth's statistics on her tablet. Earth has the same basic atmosphere, but our oxygen levels spike much. Higher during certain seasons, our temperatures range from -40 to +50 degrees. We have storms that can level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that block out the sun, and natural radiation levels that would kill most galactic species. Vexai stared at the data, his feathers ruffling with shock. Is impossible. How do you survive on such a world? We don't just survive, Morrison said quietly, we thrive. Earth is what we call a Class 12 death world. Everything on our planet has spent millions of years trying to kill everything else. Learn to fight back. The alien leader was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. You mean to say that you come from a world so dangerous that it has made you into natural warriors? Something like that? Morrison confirmed. We didn't know there were peaceful worlds like yours out there? Thought everyone had to fight to survive? Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Zillinok squawked from his communication station. Council leader, the Kreks are demanding to speak with the new arrivals. On the main screen, Commander Thractor's scarred face appeared. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the humans. More prey animals come to die uselessly. I am Commander Thractor of the Kreks Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed along with these pathetic birds. Morrison stepped forward, his face calm but his eyes hard. Commander Thractor, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to help our new friends, and you're in our way. Thractor's jaw dropped open, showing rows of sharp teeth. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever spoken to him with such casual disrespect. You dare threaten me, little mammal. My fleet will crush your tiny ships like insects. Feel free to try, Morrison replied. But I should warn you, we're not like the other species you've been bullying. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us, and we're still here. That should tell you something. Thractor snarled and cut the transmission. Within minutes, Kreks battle groups were moving toward the human fleet positions. Vexai turned to Morrison with worry clear in his large eyes. Captain, their ships are much larger than yours. Each Kreks dreadnought carries enough firepower to destroy a moon. Morrison smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression that made even the peaceful Zephyrian take a step back. Vexai, you called for help because you needed warriors. You got Deathworlders instead. Trust me, we know how to handle bullies. As alarms began sounding throughout the bunker and the Kreks fleet moved to attack, none of the aliens realized they were about to witness something the galaxy had never seen before. They were about to learn why evolution had made humans into the most dangerous predators in known space, and why their desperate call for help was about to become the Kreks. Empire's worst nightmare. The battle for Zeph Prime was about to begin, and the Kreks had no idea what they were really fighting. The first Kreks plasma barrage lit up space like a deadly fireworks show. Commander Thractor watched from his flagship as dozens of his most powerful weapons struck the small human vessels. The energy beams that could melt through solid rock and vaporize entire city blocks hit the Earth's ships dead on. Thractor expected to see the human fleet disappear in brilliant explosions. Instead, his tactical officer, Subcommander Kleckstar, turned to him with confusion written across his scaled features. Sir, the human ships are still there. Our plasma cannons barely scratch their holes. Impossible, Thractor snarled. Those weapons can destroy a Zephyrian cruiser with a single hit. Fire again, all batteries. The second barrage was even more intense than the first. Every Kreks ship in the fleet opened fire simultaneously, creating a wall of superheated plasma. That should have turned the human vessels into glowing slag. But when the energy dissipated, the human ships were still there, moving forward with steady determination. On the bridge of Terra's Wrath, Captain Morrison checked his damage reports. How are we looking, Lieutenant Beck? Hull temperature up 12%. Minor scoring on the outer plating, Beck reported.
Act.
The new armor is performing exactly as designed, sir. Morrison nodded. Earth's engineers had built their ships too. Survive in space around a violent star, withstand asteroid impacts, and operate in radiation fields that would cook most alien technology. What the Krex considered devastating firepower was just another day in Earth's neighborhood. All ships, advance and engage, Morrison ordered. Remember, we want to disable their vessels if possible. These Krex might have useful information about other Coalition worlds. In the underground bunker, Vex High and his staff watched the battle displays in stunned silence. The human ships, tiny compared to the massive Krex dreadnoughts, were flying straight into the enemy formation without fear.
How were their ships surviving? Whispered Kixara, her golden feathers pale with shock.
Those plasma beams destroyed our entire Fifth Fleet in minutes. Dr. Amy Johnson, who had stayed behind to study Zephyrian biology, looked up from her scanner readings. Your people evolved on a gentle world. You built your ships for comfort and efficiency, not survival. Humans come from a planet that tries to kill us every day. We build everything to last. The space battle was only the beginning. Kea's landing craft broke through the planet's atmosphere. Human dropships followed them down. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone led the first ground assault team, her armored boots hitting the crystalline surface of Zeph Prime with impacts that would have shattered alien bones. Alpha Team, form up on me, Stone commanded through her helmet radio. Remember, these Krex are bigger than us, but they've never fought anything that hits back hard. The Krex ground forces were indeed impressive by galactic standards. 8 feet tall with natural armor plating, they moved with the confidence of predators who had never met their match. Squad leader Grixenol led his warriors toward the human landing zone, expecting to find the same fragile creatures they had been slaughtering for 10 years instead. They found something that would haunt Krex nightmares for generations to come. The first human soldier Grixenol encountered was Sergeant Tony Martinez, a compact man who stood barely 6 feet tall. Martinez was carrying what looked like a small metal tube, hardly threatening compared to Krex plasma rifles. But when the human pulled the trigger, the explosion that followed sent 3 Krex warriors flying through the air. Grenades are effective. Ma'am, Martinez reported calmly to Stone. These guys aren't used to explosive weapons. Grixenol roared in fury and charged at Martinez with his energy blade extended. The Krex warrior outweighed the human by nearly 200 pounds and moved with surprising speed, but Martinez had been training for combat since he was 18 years old, on a world where everything wanted to eat him. The human sidestepped the charge with fluid grace, grabbed the Krex warrior's extended arm, and used the alien's own momentum to flip him face first into the crystal ground. The impact cracked Grixenol's armor and left him gasping for breath. Ma'am, I think their bones are hollow like the Zephyrians, Martinez observed, restraining the stunned Krex with metal cuffs. They're built for intimidation, not actual fighting. As the ground battle spread across the planet's surface, the Krex discovered that humans fought unlike any species they had encountered. Where other galactic races tried to avoid casualties and preserve resources, humans seemed to embrace violence with an efficiency that was terrifying to witness. Corporal Lisa Hayes demonstrated human tactical thinking when her squad encountered a Krex stronghold. Instead of trying to storm the fortified position directly, she used something called thermite to melt through the walls from an unexpected angle. The Krex inside were so shocked by the tactic that they surrendered without firing a shot. Is this substance? Demanded the captured Krex commander, staring at the hole melted through 3 feet of reinforced metal. Iron oxide and aluminum powder, Hayes explained cheerfully. Basic chemistry. We use it for welding and demolition back home. Dr. Amy Johnson made a crucial discovery while treating wounded Krex prisoners. Their impressive scales, designed for their low-gravity homeworld, couldn't handle the stress of fighting on a higher gravity. Planted against opponents who moved faster and hit harder than anything in their evolutionary history. Captain Morrison. You need to see this, Johnson reported over the radio. The Krex physiology is breaking down under combat stress. Their scales are cracking. Bones are fracturing from impacts that wouldn't seriously hurt a human, and their nervous systems seem to be overloading. Overloading how? Morrison asked. They've never faced real predators before, Johnson explained. Their fight-flight response is stuck on flight, but they can't run away from us. It's causing complete psychological breakdown. The evidence was clear across every battlefield. Krex warriors who had terrorized peaceful species for decades were now cowering in their bunkers, too afraid to face human soldiers in direct combat. The psychological impact was spreading faster than the physical defeats. Back in space, Commander Thractor was learning the same hard lesson. His massive flagship, the scale of a small city, was being systematically disabled by human fighters that moved like angry insects around his hull. Pilot out. Lieutenant Dan Cooper flew his fighter through a gap in the Krex ship's defenses that would have been suicide for any other species. But Cooper had learned to fly in Earth's turbulent atmosphere, dodging lightning strikes and navigating through storms that would tear apart alien aircraft. Landing charges on their main reactor, Cooper reported, his voice steady despite pulling. G-forces that would have killed most galactic species. These big ships have a lot of weak spots once you get inside their shield perimeter. The explosion that followed crippled Thractor's flagship and sent shockwaves through the entire Krex fleet. For the first time in his military career, the Krex commander felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance, Thractor ordered, his voice shaking. We need to reassess our enemy. In the underground bunker, Vexai watched the tactical displays with wonder and growing hope. The human ships that had looked so small and fragile were systematically dismantling a Krex fleet that had conquered 14 worlds. Human ground forces were pushing back Krex warriors who had never lost a battle. How is this possible? Vexai asked Ambassador Helen Price. Your people are smaller than the Krex. Your ships are tiny compared to theirs, but you're winning. Helen smiled. But there was something predatory in her expression that reminded Vexai that humans were the products of a death world. Council leader, the Krex have spent generations fighting farmers and artists and scientists. We spent millions of years fighting things that wanted to eat us. There's a difference. As night fell on Zeph Prime, the tide of battle had completely turned. Krex forces were in full retreat, their commanders sending desperate messages to their homeworlds about the Deathworld demons who seemed immune to fear and pain. Some Krex units had simply abandoned their positions and fled rather than face human soldiers in combat. But the real shock was yet to come, as Thractor tried to reorganize. His scattered forces, he received a message from Human Fleet Command that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Commander Thractor, this is Captain Morrison. We've taken your ground forces prisoner, disabled most of your fleet, and secured the planet. You have two choices. Surrender now, and we'll treat your people fairly, or keep fighting and learn why. Evolution made us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. For the first time in Krex history, a military commander faced with overwhelming force chose surrender over glorious death. Thractor had looked into the abyss of human warfare and discovered that some predators were too dangerous to fight. News of the defeat at Zeph Prime spread through Krex space like wildfire. In the military command centers of a dozen worlds, Krex generals stared at battle reports that seemed impossible to believe. An entire assault fleet, led by their most successful commander, had been crushed by a species no one had ever heard of before. Subadmiral Verkeseth paced nervously in his command chamber on the fortress world of Krexstar. The reports from Thractor's surviving officers painted a picture that challenged everything the Krex believed about warfare and their place in the galaxy. They say the human ships shrugged off plasma fire like it was nothing, reported intelligence. Officer Nekstrom, his voice shaking as he read from the tactical analysis, their ground forces use explosive weapons we've never encountered, and they fought with a savagery that broke our warriors' will to fight. Impossible, Vraxith snarled, but his confidence was shaken. What manner of species could defeat Krex forces so easily? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Zilkon, the Krex Empire's chief xenobiologist, had been studying the intercepted communications from the human fleet. What he discovered sent chills through the entire military hierarchy. Admiral, we have made a terrible mistake, Zilkon announced, his scaled hands trembling as he held his research pad. The humans come from what the Galactic database classifies as a Class 12 death world. Sir, only 3 such worlds are known to exist in our entire galaxy. Explain what that means, Doctor, Vraxith demanded. It means we have attacked the apex predators of known space, Zilkon replied. These humans evolved on a world so hostile that simply surviving to adulthood requires abilities that would make them legendary warriors on any normal planet. Their atmospheric pressure is crushing, their gravity is punishing, their weather systems are violent beyond imagination, and their native life forms are designed to kill. The implications hit Vraxith like a physical blow. The Krex had built their empire by conquering peaceful species who had evolved on gentle worlds. They had never encountered anything like this before. How many human worlds are there? He asked quietly. Unknown, but their communication suggests multiple colony systems and a significant industrial base. Sir, if they decide to retaliate against us, we may not be able to stop them. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was learning just how far the human reputation had already spread. As the Terra's wrath moved through Krex-controlled space toward other coalition worlds under attack, they intercepted dozens of military communications that mentioned the Deathworld demons. Sir, we're picking up chatter from at least 6 Krex fleets, reported Lieutenant Beck from her communications station. They're all talking about us. Some of them sound pretty scared. Morrison studied the tactical display showing Krex positions throughout the region. The aliens had forces scattered across dozens of systems, most of them engaged in occupying former coalition worlds. But something interesting was happening to those forces. Colonel Harris, are you seeing this? Morrison asked his ground forces commander. Harris looked up from his own intelligence reports. Yes, sir. Krex units are pulling back from forward positions on 3 different worlds. Some of them are abandoning their posts entirely rather than risk facing human forces. The psychological impact was spreading faster than the human fleet could possibly travel. Stories of the battle at Zeph Prime had grown in the telling, painting humans as unstoppable killing machines who felt no fear and showed no mercy. While the stories were exaggerated, they were having a very real effect on Krex morale. Dr. Amy Johnson made another crucial discovery when she completed her analysis of captured Krex equipment and physiology. Captain, I think I understand why we're so effective against them. They've never had to develop real military technology because they've never faced serious resistance. What do you mean? Morrison asked. Their weapons are designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower against undefended targets, Johnson explained. But they're not efficient. Their armor is impressive looking but not practical for extended combat. Even their tactics assume the enemy will break and run after the first exchange. This gave Morrison an idea that would change the course of the entire war. Instead of simply responding to Krex attacks, humans could go on the offensive, using the aliens' own weaknesses against them. Lieutenant Commander Stone, I want you to take Alpha Company and hit the Krex supply depot in the Nexus system, Morrison ordered. Don't engage their main forces. Just destroy their supplies and get out. Sir, that's 12 light years behind their front lines, Stone protested. They'll never expect us to strike that deep. Exactly, Morrison smiled. They're not used to enemies who think strategically. Let's teach them what real warfare looks like. The raid on Nexus Station became legendary among both human and alien forces. Stone's commandos approached the massive supply depot using a technique no Krex commander had ever imagined. They simply ignored the base's defenses and attacked from an angle that the aliens had considered impossible. Sergeant Martinez and his demolitions team used something the Krex had never encountered before: improvised explosive devices. Using common industrial chemicals found at the depot itself, they created bombs that could destroy entire storage facilities. Ma'am, their security is designed to keep out spies and saboteurs, Martinez reported to Stone as explosions bloomed across the depot. They never imagined anyone would try to blow up the whole facility. Within 6 hours, the largest Krex supply base in the sector was completely destroyed. Thousands of tons of weapons, ammunition, food, and medical supplies went up in flames. But more importantly, the raid sent a message that human forces could strike anywhere, anytime, the Krex Empire began to fracture under the psychological pressure. On the border world of Vex Prime, Governor Hickstall received orders to continue the conquest of coalition territories despite the human threat. Instead, he made a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Send a message to the human fleet, Hickstall ordered his communications officer, then tell them that Vex Prime declares neutrality in this conflict. We will not attack coalition worlds, and we ask only to be left alone. Similar declarations began coming from Krex worlds throughout the frontier. Faced with the prospect of fighting Deathworlders who treated war as a natural state of existence, many Krex governors chose survival over conquest. But Emperor Vosktar was not ready to give up his empire's expansion. From his throne world deep in Krex space, he issued orders that would prove to be his greatest mistake. Send word to all fleet commanders, the Emperor commanded. Any world that declares neutrality or surrenders to the humans will be considered treasonous. We will destroy them ourselves before we allow these Deathworld demons to think they have one. The message was intercepted by human intelligence, and Captain Morrison realized they had reached a turning point in the war. The Krex Empire was turning on itself. Torn between the fear of human retaliation and their own imperial pride, Ambassador Helen Price worked with the Zephyrian Coalition to establish communication channels with rebellious Krex worlds. We're not here to conquer anyone, she broadcast on open frequencies. We're here to stop the aggression against peaceful species. Any Krex world that chooses peace over war will be protected by human forces. Wow. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within days, 17 Krex worlds had declared independence from the Empire and requested human protection. The cascade effect was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. Chief Engineer Rob Turner, working with Coalition scientists, developed a new weapon specifically designed to exploit Krex weaknesses. The sonic disruptor used frequency patterns that interfered with Krex nervous systems, causing panic and disorientation without permanent harm. It's like their entire species has a built-in weakness to certain sound patterns, Turner explained to Dr. Johnson. Probably because they never evolved alongside predators that used sonic attacks. As the human fleet moved deeper into Krex space, they found a crumbling empire in chaos. Some worlds fought desperately to maintain imperial control, while others welcomed human forces as liberators from their own government's tyranny. The final phase of the war was beginning. And it would end not with a great battle, but with the complete collapse of an empire that had discovered it was no match for species that had learned to fight on the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy, Emperor Vostar. Isolated in his palace as rebellion spread throughout his territories, finally began to understand the true cost of attacking Deathworlders. He had started a war against farmers and scientists, only to discover he was fighting the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. The end came not with the roar of plasma cannons or the thunder of exploding ships, but with a simple message broadcast across the former Krex Empire. Emperor Vastar, once ruler of 37 star systems, sat alone in his throne room as rebellion consumed his territories. Outside his palace windows, he could see the lights of human ships holding position in orbit around his capital world. This is Emperor Vaskdar of the Krex Empire. He spoke into the recording device with a voice that trembled with defeat. I hereby order all Krex military forces to cease hostilities against the Zephyrian Coalition and their human allies. The war is over, we surrender. Captain Jake Morrison received the message while standing on the bridge of Terra's Wrath watching the last Krex battle fleet surrender without firing a shot. In just 3 months, the mighty empire that had terrorized peaceful species for a decade had completely collapsed. Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from the remaining Krex strongholds, reported Lieutenant Beck. 43 worlds have laid down their weapons and are requesting terms. Morrison nodded, feeling both relief and sadness. Relief that the killing was over, sadness that it had taken so much destruction to reach this point. Send word to all human ships, accept their surrenders, and begin humanitarian operations immediately. These people need food and medical aid, not more punishment. Down on the surface of Krexstar, the former Imperial capital ambassador Helen Price worked with representatives from both sides to establish the framework for a lasting peace. The great conference hall that had once echoed with plans for conquest now hosted discussions of rebuilding and reconciliation. Vexai, the Zephyrian coalition, sat across from former Krex General Nexvel, who had been elected as a temporary leader by the rebellious worlds. Between them, Helen worked to bridge the gap between species that had been enemies for so long. The coalition seeks no revenge, Vexai declared, his feathered hands folded peacefully. We want only to ensure this never happens again. Our worlds need time to heal. Our people need time to rebuild. Nexvel, a scarred veteran who had spent his entire career following imperial orders, struggled to find words. Council leader Mai. People committed terrible crimes under the Emperor's rule. How can you forgive what we have done? Because, Helen Price interjected gently, hatred only creates more hatred. The humans have shown us a different way. They could have destroyed your empire completely, but instead, they chose to break the cycle of violence. The peace negotiations took weeks, but the framework that emerged would reshape the entire region of space. The Krex Empire was dissolved, replaced by independent worlds that chose their own governments. The Zephyrian coalition expanded to include former Krex territories that wanted protection from future aggression. Most importantly, the Deathworld Protection Accord was established. Any species facing extinction could broadcast a call for help, and human forces would respond. The galaxy had learned that while Deathworlders were terrifying in war, they were equally fierce in defending those they had chosen to protect. Dr. Amy Johnson completed her study of galactic species and made a discovery that changed everything. Captain, I've analyzed the biological data from 17 different species we've encountered. Every single one evolved on what we would consider paradise worlds. Low gravity, gentle climates, abundant resources, few predators, and Morrison asked, though he suspected where this was leading. Where the anomaly, Johnson continued. Earth really is one of the most hostile worlds in known space. Most species never developed the survival instincts, physical resilience, or tactical thinking that we consider normal. We're not just warriors, sir. We're the galaxy's apex predators, and most other species are the equivalent of sheep. This realization led to the establishment of the Human Defense Corps, a joint military force combining human tactical expertise with alien technology and resources. The Zephyrians contributed their crystal healing technology. The Murthai provided underwater combat capabilities. And even reformed Krex worlds offered their knowledge of heavy weapon systems. Colonel Ben Harris found himself training alien soldiers in human combat techniques, though he had to be careful not to push them beyond their physical limitations. Remember, these beings are brave, but they're not built like us, he reminded his human instructors. Work with their strengths. Don't try to turn them into human soldiers. The transformation was remarkable. Zephyrian pilots, with their naturally excellent reflexes and three-dimensional thinking, became exceptional fighter pilots once they learned human aggressive tactics. Murthai warriors proved deadly in aquatic environments when taught human stealth and ambush techniques. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Carter established the Galactic Translation Center on the rebuilt world of New Zeph, working to bridge communication gaps between dozens of species. Her facility became a gathering place where former enemies learned to work together. Language is more than words, Carter explained to her mixed staff of humans and aliens. When we teach the Krex to understand coalition languages, we're teaching them to think like their former victims. When we teach coalition species to speak Krex, we're helping them understand their former oppressors. Understanding prevents future wars. The most dramatic change came in how galactic civilizations viewed conflict resolution. For the human intervention, most species simply accepted that aggressive empires would eventually conquer peaceful ones. The appearance of Deathworlders changed that calculation completely. Ambassador became the first human representative to the expanded Galactic Council, which now included species from across known space. Her first address to the Assembly became famous throughout human and alien territories alike. We came to this region of space because we heard a cry for help, she said, standing before representatives of 47 different species. We discovered that the galaxy was full of people living in fear, accepting conquest as inevitable. But conquest is not inevitable. Aggression can be stopped. Bullies can be defeated. All it takes is someone willing to stand up and fight back. The Council voted unanimously to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance, with Earth as its military headquarters and the human fleet as its primary enforcement arm. But the real power of the Alliance lay not in its weapons, but in its promise. No peaceful species would ever again face extinction alone, Captain. Morrison found himself promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Alliance fleet. From his flagship, now renamed the Peacekeeper, he oversaw a force that included ships and crews from dozens of worlds. The sight of former Krex destroyers flying alongside Zephyrian crystal ships and human battle cruisers became a symbol of the new galactic order. The war crimes trials that followed were handled with the same care as the peace negotiations. Rather than executing war criminals, the Alliance established rehabilitation programs where former Imperial officers worked alongside their victims to rebuild destroyed worlds. Many Krex generals who had once ordered the destruction of cities found themselves helping to build new ones. Emperor Vasktar himself was given a choice: exile to a remote world, or service in the Alliance Relief Corps. To everyone's surprise, he chose service, spending his remaining years distributing food and medicine to refugees from his own former empire. Years later, Svexhai stood in the crystal gardens of rebuilt Zeph Prime, watching human and alien children play together under purple skies. He reflected on how much had changed. The memorial wall behind him bore the names of billions who had died in the Krex Wars, but it also carried a message of hope. They answered our call when we had nowhere else to turn, the inscription read. They came as warriors, but stayed as friends. They taught us that the strong have a duty to protect the weak, and the weak have the right to ask for help. In the darkness of space, humanity lit a beacon that will shine forever. Dr. Carter's final report to Earth Command became required reading. At academies across human space, we answered a cry for help, thinking we were just another species. We discovered we were the galaxy's apex predators, and our enemies learned why evolution made us that way. But more importantly, our friends learned that predators can choose to be protectors. The galaxy had learned that when peaceful species begged Deathworlders for help, they got something more dangerous than saviors and more valuable than warriors. They got guardians who would never let them face extinction alone again.